So the first time I ever got pictures of this deer was 2020, end of September. And I just got one day, about 4 pictures. Two of them, they're not even that good of pictures. He's 40, 50 yards away from the camera, but I got him right here in this corner, and the only intel I had was the last picture. He looked like he was going this way. And I kind of looked at the map and I seen there was a swamp here, and I thought, maybe he's bedding in that swamp. So that's what I set up for. And then the next time I got pictures of him, we have a small food plot right in here, in that strip. And we set up a spot here and set up a spot here because in the beginning of October, the next picture I would get would be right here, out of velvet, right in front of the camera. Beautiful picture, gave me a good idea of what he was, and started to give me a little more intel. I figured he was bedding in here. He'd come through, maybe get up and go through that saddle up that ridge, and then just kind of do his thing throughout the night, and then come back through like this and go back. That's what I thought he was doing, so that's what I set up for. I put a camera up over here, never got a picture of him going through this way, so I started to realize he wasn't anywhere over in here. So after a couple weeks hunting and not having any sightings of the deer, putting a camera up, not seeing the deer, we decided, give it a break and just focus on hunting. Let's just hunt. And my wife and I sat in this little corner right here with a west wind that was blowing this way towards the road, and we had a big scrape, looked like a community scrape, primary scrape, not quite sure. It's just a big scrape that all the deer were coming through and hitting. So we set up there, hoping to have some luck, and the wind in that spot, it just did not do what we were expecting to do. It kept blowing back into the food plot, maybe hitting the tree line. There's a ridge system that works this way here. Maybe it was bouncing off that, coming back down this. I'm not sure. Just it wasn't working. So we got out and went to a different spot. So now we're getting into that pre-rut phase, and still no sightings of that deer. Nothing. Not figuring out what he's doing. And then all of a sudden we get a picture right here on this strip, and it's a nighttime picture. He's going towards this food plot. It's got me thinking back to he's doing this circle again, but I'm just not sure where it's at. And after deciding I can't figure out what this deer's doing, I decided, we're gonna move one of these stands and try and figure out some sign. It's pre-rut, maybe he's laid some down. I don't like doing this too much because I don't want to booger anything out. I like to do all this stuff April, May. It's the best time I feel to scout and see all the sign, but sometimes you got to make adjustments and go with the flow. So we decided to change this spot up. Came down here. My brother was sitting and hunting back over in here, and there's a big ridge system, so nothing was bothering him. And as we were setting up or looking for a spot to set up, I noticed there were some tracks coming off that scrape, and I'm not too familiar with tracks and big deer, big animals and all that stuff. I hunt in Michigan. I've never really had the opportunity to hunt mature animals, but let me tell you, these were some big tracks. They were like moose tracks, and I decided to follow those tracks back. And when I followed those tracks, I followed them to a deer trail that went right into a thicket, and the amount of sign I seen when I went up this way on that deer trail was unreal. I seen 5 scrapes within 100 yards of each other, all on the same trail. Each side of the tree on the back side going to the food plot was rubbed up. It was just unreal. So I followed that trail and I started to put together, there's a ridge system here, and there's points. There's a point here, there's a point back over here on the neighbors, and there's a couple over here, and that ridge goes on and on until at least a half a mile. So there's so many opportunities for mature bucks to bed there, and the thermals, the wind, it's perfect. So what that deer was doing, I started to realize, is he was getting up out of his bed with a southwest predominantly. That's the wind we get. He was getting out of his bed, and he was coming down like this on that trail to smell where he was going, to know what he was getting into before he could see it or before he was even there. And with that stand right here, our wind's blowing right up to him. If it's making it up there, but it's blowing right to him. So that deer's not even leaving when we're here. So I started to see we need to be back here more, and that wind needs to bypass him. So after picking out a tree, we set up roughly right here, about 20 yards off that deer trail, and it wasn't until November 13th that I was able to hunt it. COVID kind of hit, and that caused a problem. I'm not going to get too much into all that stuff, but it was an issue. So we weren't able to hunt too much during that beginning of November, but November 13th, it didn't really matter. That was the day. I sat there. He came down this trail with a southwest wind. I didn't even realize it until he was 15 yards from me. I had deer out here. Never in my life have I seen this. I had 6 does out here, and they just started blowing. They freaked out, stood there for 2 minutes just stomping and blowing, and then finally took off up this hill and then went around, not sure where they went, but they didn't want to be there. And all I could think was, my wind turned, it switched, they must have got me. What just happened? Is there a coyote coming? Is there somebody else on the property? And no more than did I look around, he was right there, 15 yards behind me, just looking, just sitting there looking and investigating the food plot in the thicket. He was 20 yards from the field edge. He did not seem concerned in going in the field whatsoever. He was going to stay in the thick, and what he did was come around like this, and before he could get off the property, I ended up getting a shot on him, and I thought it was a good hit. I thought it was a great hit. I was excited. I was pumped. Called my wife, waited an hour or so, got down, and could not find any blood. Couldn't figure out what happened. Ended up finding my arrow an hour later and realized that I only got about 1.5 inches of penetration. Broke my broadhead off. He still had the broadhead in him. And as I continued to go up the ridge this way, I ended up kicking him up, but I could see where I hit him. I hit him high in the shoulder. Not a lethal wound. Don't know what to say about it. Don't have much to say about it. I know it happens to all of us. First time for me on the high shoulder shot, and it was a heartbreaker. Let me tell you, he was a wall hanger 2 years ago. I would have hung him on the wall then, but that's how it goes. You know, my wife told me maybe it was meant to be. Maybe he'll get bigger and you'll be able to shoot him next year. And little did I know that was exactly what God had in plan. So 2020, get to gun season, don't see him. I start to get an idea. He's coming down this way with a southwest wind, and the way our property is, we have a big thicket over here. So I just assume, you know, with the west wind, he's probably running this side. And when I set up there, we never seen him. I figured, you know, after hitting him 2 days before, I'm not going to see him again for the rest of the year. Gun season in Michigan, the bucks, it's hit or miss for a couple days, and then they're gone. They're in the swamps, or they're just not going to find them really. But I ended up shooting a decent 6-point, 7-point. He kind of a goofy deer, a 3.5-year-old, but I was blessed enough to shoot him and feed my family and others that needed it. And then it was on to the 2021 season and preparation for that. So now we're on the 2021 season, and I got high hopes for it. We bust our butts all summer long trying to do food plots and just putting in what we think the deer are gonna like, and we ended up putting in some brassica and clover and had another cornfield, and it seemed to pay off pretty good this year. But anyways, I'm not getting any pictures of this deer. I'm not having any sort of sign whatsoever. Other than that scrape pops back up again about October 20th. That seems to be the thing with our property is, we don't have bucks during the summer or anything. We got a couple does, couple groups of does throughout the property, and that's just about it. But once fall comes, we typically have anywhere from a dozen to even 20 bucks on our property with 4 to 5 shooters, and it seems to be a good fit for us, just keeping the property bare throughout the summer and working real hard for the fall. And that's how we approach our game. But the bucks didn't show up quite yet. Wasn't getting any sign other than that scrape, and like I said, that was about October 20th. I started to think, okay, that's when he's going to show up. So that's when I started looking real hard for him, and it was about October 27th that I got my first picture of him, and let me tell you, he looked pretty good this year. I got quite a few pictures of him coming through at night in this area right here, kind of where I had that spot set up, and it told me, maybe he remembers what happened last year, so he's not going to really be doing a whole lot in the daytime down here. So maybe I should try pushing up further. So I ended up coming in about 70 yards more, and I ended up having 2 different encounters with them. I didn't get any great footage. You can kind of see a couple glimpses of him in his rack, but I had 2 different encounters of him with him on November 12th, and thought it was going to happen then, but it just wasn't meant to be. I think that was a bad call because the way the neighbor's property is, it's so thick right here, but then it opens up. His path of travel could be anywhere through this thicket or anywhere on our property through that thicket. Typically he likes to run this little open 2-track that's been overgrown for a couple of years. But like I said, I don't know if he is putting together what happened last year, if he remembers. I'm assuming he does. I know I'd remember if I got shot in the shoulder with a broadhead, but that's just kind of how I was thinking in the moment, and I ended up backing off. And it was early November. My brother and I both ended up going up, and he had a sighting 2 nights in a row of him. I was hunting over here, which I shouldn't have been, on a west wind. It was blowing like this, blowing right up pretty much where he was at. But I had a lot of action going on over here, so I figured, that'd be a good spot to set up. And my brother set up right here, and he watched that deer just before dark come through this thicket just like this, and then stop. And there's an open lane with some clover on it right here, and then it comes like this and like this. But he came right through here just like this, and then stopped. And he stood there, my brother said, for 5 minutes, and then eventually worked his way up that thicket out of range until he couldn't see him anymore. What I put together this scrape, because when I got down out of that tree that night, I looked over and I could see a big body deer in that scrape pawing it out, and then eventually work his way off this way. So now looking back, I'm starting to realize why I got pictures of them over here, or why there now in 2021 there's some scrapes and rubs and stuff over in here. So out of west wind, he's coming down just like this, crossing this lane, and then he's working his way up to that scrape. Or I don't know, maybe he would have kept going through, and maybe he just smelled something he liked in that scrape. I'm not sure, but that's how he's using it. He's using the edge here. This is somewhat open. It's getting pretty thick, but this is what he wants. This is what's thick, this line right here. And he's coming through just off this ridge, off from one of them points, just like that on a west wind. And then if he smells something he likes, he's cutting up to it, because this is all doe bedding in here. And then on a southwest wind, he would come just like this, and either come into whatever he liked, what he could smell, because there's so many doe trails off here cutting into this food plot. That's what those scrapes are there for. He's marking them. Those does will come up and pee in those scrapes and let him know that he's ready, and all he's got to do is cross those trails. I always said that too, if I was a buck, why would I go in the heart of a bedding area when I can cross a bunch of trails and smell every single doe in that bedding area? So he'd come down just like this on a southwest wind, and that's what he did the year before. And that's when I shot him, and I don't know if that's why he moved over here, but like I said, that's what he's doing. Southwest over here, west wind over here. So that's what we've got put together on this deer now in the 2021 season, going into the second week of November. So November 13th, I get a southwest wind. So I decide I'm going to sit here. I'm kind of up on a point. So I'm from where I'm at right here to where the ground is right here. I'm 25 feet in the tree, plus I'm another 10 feet on that point. So I'm up there a little ways, and I've kind of got this thing that I noticed that, you know, when a deer's downwind to you, but you're up at a certain point, it seems like they can't smell you. It's not scent lock, it's not scent cover, it's not this, it's not that. It's just your scent zone is out of their range of smell. You're too high for them to smell. Now, if they're 100 yards, 200 yards, maybe they can smell you, but if they're 60 yards you're in, I think that's the trick, is just getting up a little bit higher in the tree, or, you know, getting on a point or something, just giving yourself a little more elevation. But anyways, you know, November 12th, I had a lot of deer cruising this edge over here, and a lot of does coming through into the food plot. I sat there all day, and it was 10:30, 11 o'clock. I look behind me, and I just see nothing but a rack coming from this swamp, just like this. And it's so thick in here, I could only see a couple glimpses of him. So I grabbed my bow. I figured he was going to do the same thing that the 8-point I shot earlier in the year did. And I'm waiting. I got my camera ready, and all of a sudden I see glimpses of him out here. So what he did was he come down, checked one of the scrapes, and then he cut back up. And the timing of it, you know, 10, 11 o'clock, I'm assuming he was just getting done from whatever he was doing throughout the night, and he was getting back up, because the last I seen him was right here. I got a little glimpse of him on the camera, one here and one here. I'm thinking he was going back up to his bed. So just kind of confirmation on what he's doing there with a southwest wind. So now we got the 13th and the 14th of November, and we got some pretty heavy snow, big storm, lots of wind, just looks like a whiteout at times. And we're getting ready to walk out with our rifles now, November 15th, and we got 2 inches of snow on the ground. So my confidence is high. We all decide, you know, where does everybody want to sit? Everybody picks. I make the note that somebody should sit here, and, you know, everybody every year's got their spot. So everybody picked their spot, and just something was telling me, you know, this is going back to what my wife told me the year before. You know, maybe you were meant to miss him and not get him this year, so you can get him next year when he's bigger. And I had that in the back of my head the whole time. So I'm going to sit here. I'm going to sit right here. We're going to have a west wind. We just got a bunch of snow. If that deer's not with a doe and got her locked up, there's a good chance that he's going to cut this lane, cruising this edge. And as you can see in the video, it wasn't no more than a couple hours. Here he comes. I caught a glimpse of his rack coming over the hill here, and it felt like the longest 5 minutes of my life, because it's so thick here. I didn't cut a lane, so I couldn't see him. But as soon as I seen that doe pop out, I knew right then and there. I could see the pee on the back of her legs. That buck's following her. So I got ready, put the camera on, as you can see, and had to put another shot in him. I was a little excited. I've never had a deer that big within range, either 30 yards with a bow or 100 yards with a gun. I've never had a deer like that in front of me that I was able to pull the trigger on. And, you know, just going back to that morning too, and the way it was such a beautiful morning. Just the snow, the way the family was up there, and how it always is every year with the family. To me, that felt like a God-given moment. And I know that this is a strategy video in a way, but I'll definitely be the first to say it. Sometimes I need a little push from God and a little luck from Him, and I think that definitely helped. But as you can see too, that deer, he had a strict pattern. Southwest wind, he's doing this, and that's because he can smell everything that he's coming into before he sees it. He can see everything over here because it's wide open. It's the same exact thing on a west wind. He's coming right through here. He can smell everything that he can't see but that he wants to go into before he gets to it, and he can see everything over here because it's somewhat open. And that's what they do. I mean, he was in each time about 20 yards into the thicket, so think about that if you set up a stand. But that's what they do. This deer, he was aged at 5 years old, scored at almost 126. He was 125. I know that they got some weird things with scoring and stuff, so he's 125 and 3/8, but just a clean 8-point, beautiful deer to me. It's crazy to watch these people that have these history with the deer and stuff, and to actually live it out and have your own history with it. It gives you a drive to keep going and keep trying. So I hope this helps somebody, and I hope that you can get some good tips from this, and maybe put up your stand next year with this in mind. But thanks for watching. Thanks for everybody that's subscribed and liked and commented and did all that. I'm gonna keep going, keep trying to get better and get more stuff up for you. But don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks. See you next time. You did it.
Let's get you on your...
You say bye-bye?
Huh?
Say bye-bye. See you next time.
Bye-bye. See you next... Bye-bye. See you next time.